Hi guys, welcome back to yet another review, and this time around I'm bringing you the Kiwi Ears Orchestra 2. I've had this IEM now for a couple of weeks. I received it towards the end of last year, sometime around mid-November. And I took my time to listen to it. I just didn't want to jump into that very rushed review and just push it out the door and not give it the necessary listening time to make sure that my opinion is funded on proper experience with the actual IEM. Anyway, let's get into this. Kiwi Ears brings this time around a nicer case, a bigger case. They usually have that smaller black case, which I'm not a real big fan of it, although I have to admit that it's pretty pocketable. So it brings this nicer case, which obviously does fit the IEM nicely. A very nice selection of tips. I'm using the provided tips. There was really no need for me to change them out, although then I did end up trying and I actually have it here with the Divinus Velvet just to see how they would sound with the Divinus Velvet. But the stock tips and the Divinus Velvet, they sound basically the same. Anyway, as for the IEM, this is the stock cable. Exchangeable termination here for the cable, 4.4 and 3.5. The IEM itself, it's a nice mix of a resin shell, excuse me, resin shell and a metal faceplate with some I don't know, well, some work done on it anyway. It's a big IEM. I mean, it does have 10 BA, so it's a pretty big IEM. One nice thing that I want to call your attention to is the fact that they've used these transparent BAs. I'm not sure whether this transparent BA does confer any improvement in terms of the sound. I don't think it does. I think it's just basically down to giving it a different appearance, a more interesting, lively appearance. And that's basically it. It's divided up into two BAs for the bass, 4 BAs for the mids, and 4 BAs for the highs. I'm not sure which BAs are being used, but if it's anything to go by the original Orchestra Lite, which used the 22-955s for the bass, I would think it would be safe to assume that that's what they're using here this time around again. As for the high frequency BAs, which you can see here, and well, these ones are the high frequency BAs and these are the mid frequency BAs. I can't really say what they are, but it wouldn't be surprising if it was 29-689s and 33-518s or something of the sort, or copies of those IEMs. Anyway, like I said, it's to be honest, it's pretty irrelevant because the way that they've tuned it is pretty impressive. So no need to really know if it's Knowles, Sonian or so, or anything of the sort. It was just out of the curiosity of things. Price-wise, $349. So it's roughly a $100 price hike over the original Kiwi Ears Orchestra Lite, which I've got here next to it, which was 8 BAs, and in essence, it's basically the same configuration, just 2 less BAs for the high frequency. I've also brought out the Luna, and I've also got here a full Cantor. The Luna is $379. It's 6 BAs. It does use 2 Sonians for the bass, and then it's Knowles for the rest. And as for the Cantor, it's also again a mix of BAs from Knowles and Sonian, and it's a 14 BA IEM. In terms of price, it's a little bit, well, significantly more expensive than the rest. You can now get it for around $579, if I'm not mistaken, from a full, but usually the price is around the 670 price point. So it's a more expensive IEM, but the reason why it's here, and the reason why I've also got here the Luna from Zigat, is because they all kind of have a similar tuning style to the Orchestra 2. Anyway, jumping into what we want to know, which is what is the tuning of the Orchestra 2. Well, to be fair, I should talk about the Orchestra Lite, and that's what I'm going to start by doing. The Orchestra Lite was known for a very organic type of sound. It was an IEM that didn't offend. It was, very much vocal capable. Its vocal presentation was pretty impressive, at least in my opinion. And if there was any criticism that was made to it to a certain extent, was the fact that the bass was perhaps at times just overly lean, and it lacked a little bit of extension up top. But the reality was in my opinion at least, and I'm a big fan of the Orchestra Light, was the upper end from, let's say, 1 kilohertz above. I think it was impeccably done. Yes, there could be the odd occasion where I would have liked a little bit more twinklies and sparkles, but it wasn't offensive. And in terms of the bass, it was lacking a little bit of quantity. I'm not going to deny it. But in terms of quality, the bass was there. And I think this is probably one of the nicest implementations or one of the nicest applications of the 22955 from Knowles. It's a BA which is relatively, it's a BA that's been around for a long time, and it's not a BA that you usually see being used in more high-end products or more high-quality products. It's something that you usually will find in the lower end of the price point, with cheaper stuff from KZ and TRN and so on and so forth. And in those applications, oftentimes the way they tune them isn't really showcasing how capable the 22955 actually is. And probably one of the cheapest IEMs that does have the 22955 being used pretty well is the DT300 and DT600 from AudioSense. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is the Orchestra Light. So the Orchestra Light was known, or I think was a general consensus, was known for a very neutralish sounding IEM, a little bit thin on the bass, a little bit lacking in the upper frequencies, but overall the sound was very much vocal focused, very coherent. It sounded like just one unit being, that was present. It didn't have any flaws in terms of the frequency response. It scaled pretty well with warmer sources. I thought that maybe that lack of sparkle could be a little bit emphasized. But again, let me make it perfectly clear. I welcomed the way that it was tuned because you didn't feel that BA timbre, which sometimes can be problematic. Okay. So now the Kiwi Ears, the Orchestra 2. And I think that they listened definitely to some of the criticism that was given on the orchestra, and they didn't take it too hard. And let's adjust, let's play around. And that's exactly what they did. In terms of the bass, below 200 hertz, basically, there was a nice bump given to the energy that is present. And we're talking about an increase at around 50 hertz. For example, you have an increase of roughly 5 dBs, which is it's pretty decent. You definitely notice that the Orchestra 2 does have a little bit more weight to its bass notes. Okay, then from around, let's say, 150 to 200 hertz all the way up to about 2.5, it's basically the same. And then at 2.5 to 4, you have a little extra amount of energy there. And where you do notice that there's a lot more energy is past 10K, and that's very evident in the twinklies and sparklies, like I like calling them. The amount of detail that you have up top on the Orchestra 2 is pretty impressive. But that has not come at the cost, in my opinion, of it being thin or being shouty or that BA timbre coming out and spoiling everything. No, definitely not. The tuning that has been done here has been, again, spotless. That 100 hertz point that I like, usually to be 100 corresponding to 2 kilohertz, they've hit that on the mark. The amount of energy that you have above 2 kilohertz versus the amount of energy that you have below 100 hertz is perfectly matched. And so what you end up getting is not a bass head IEM, definitely not an IEM which is overly bright. I don't think that's the perception I got, at least. It's a very vocal focused, very mid-centric focused IEM, much like was the Orchestra Light, but with that extra amount of emphasis in the bass, which on the light was missing, and with that extra amount of twinklies and sparklers up top, which again on the light it was missing. All of this to say what? That in terms of technical capabilities, yes, the improvement is noticeable. It is an IEM which now has got a bigger soundstage. It is an IEM that has got more imaging capabilities. It is an IEM that, for example, you're going to be using it for gaming. I think it will be a superior IEM to what the Orchestra Light was capable of being. Definitely more resolution, definitely more twinklies and sparklies, and that added amount of energy up top has made the bass, which again, let me repeat, is not bass head level, has made the bass extra more crispy in terms of detail. It's a very, very clean bass. At times even, I didn't even think it was a BA bass, because the amount of, let's say, weight, not the right word, but the amount of emphasis that the bass could have was DD-like, but clean like a BA. So once you've been around and you've listened to so many IEMs, you can, I think, pretty solidly pick up an IEM which is BA based or DD based, and I think it's those ones that do that mix of things well that really are the ones that stand out, and I think that's where the Kiwi Ears in that aspect stands out. It's not an IEM that you would identify straight away as a full BA unit, but it's got that BA capability of being clean and detailed, coupled with the necessary weight or the right amount of weight that usually you see associated with DD drivers. And in essence, that's basically it, guys. I mean, there's really not much more than I can say. It's an IEM that definitely does stand out with genres like, in my opinion, vocals in general will be really well, but genres like jazz and pop really, I mean, came out. I can't complain. I was really impressed, as I was impressed as well by how it was capable of also doing some EDM pretty decently. I was not expecting there to be as much slam as I was listening, especially with songs. I'm trying to find the other name of the song. My apologies. Especially like songs for example, where is it? Oh my, hell with it when I'm trying to find things with it. Sounds Like Madness, for example. It's a song that, if those of you that haven't heard it, well, you can go to my playlist and you can find it there. Those that haven't heard it, you'll see what I mean when I say that it's a song that's got a lot of slam. Definitely, it's an EDM song, but it's got a nice amount of slam to it, which can really, show an IEM's ability to handle more energetic songs, and the orchestra did that beautifully. On the other hand, listening to something like Pour Me Out from Cassius Culpepper, or When Promises Break by Kaelis, or Under the Moonlight by Blue Man, or Last Train Blues by Laria Argento. Phenomenal. I mean, the orchestra too did this type of music, this new wave jazz, if you want to call it that way, phenomenally well. Really well. Going to things like let's see here. Let me try and choose something that maybe more of you will be acquainted with. Unconditional by Soul Persona, or Swept Away by Carol Duboc. If you enjoy Carol Duboc, did it beautifully. Brian Simpson, Twilight, another phenomenally well executed song by the orchestra too. I really, I was sure that I was going to like the orchestra too, because I know Kiwi Ears makes their products or takes time to design their products, in the sense that they put effort into designing them. They just don't churn them out. Although yes, they do launch quite a lot of IEMs over the period of a year, but you can see that the IEMs are properly designed. You do sense that there's some R&D put into it. There's some effort put into it, and the orchestra too is a perfect example of that. Anyway, I brought out here, like I mentioned, the Cantor and the Luna to, I'm not say compare, but for you guys to get a general idea of what the orchestra 2 is. And when I compare the orchestra 2 with, for example, the Cantor, even though, and I'll show you now in a moment the graph, even though the graph in terms of the bass at up to about 1 kilohertz looks or seems similar, when you listen to it, no. The Cantor 2 is, it's got a lot of detail up top, so it's a very mid-centric focused IEM. But the way that kind of tuning was done on the Cantor makes it feel still more lean on the bass than what you would expect. It's very detailed. It's an IEM that really needs you to find the proper fit for you to get the best out of it. Otherwise, you will be a little bit on the disappointed side. They tried a novel system here in the nozzle with how it was designed and how the tip fits, and it's something that you really have to play around with to get the best out of it. But once you are able to get that, what that formula that works for you, you will be impressed by the Cantor. And the Cantor does have its place. It does have its crowd. I think maybe they went too niche, in the attempt to make a really good sounding All BA IEM. They went maybe perhaps a little bit too niche. And if there was any criticism that I could point at it, is that I wish they had included a little switch to just give a little boost in the bass. I think the Cantor, all it needed was an extra 2-3 dBs of boost below, let's say, the 200 hertz point, and it would have been received and would have been understood and accepted way better than what it was. So when I compare the Cantor with the Orchestra 2, there are a lot of similarities in terms of the mids and the highs, very similar, but the bass presentation here of the Orchestra 2 is more satisfying. That, coupled with the fact that it's obviously half the price of the Cantor, roughly, it makes the argument for the Cantor a tough one. You ask yourself, is it really? No, the Orchestra 2 is the better IEM, and however much I like a full, and I'm a big fan of a full, I have to call it as it is. The Orchestra 2 is a superior IEM to the full Cantor overall, okay? As compared to the Luna, and you guys probably remember when I did the review for the Luna that I praised it very highly. I compared it to IEMs such as the 7th Acoustic Supernova, and that opinion stands. It is a really solid sounding IEM. It does everything that you ask of it, phenomenally well. You can't complain. Again, the tuning is very similar. However, where does it, in terms of price, it's a little bit more expensive than the Orchestra. However, where does it maybe lose out to the, well, maybe no, it does lose out to the Orchestra too. Let's call it, let's be fair. In terms of the bass, very equal. Although the bass here on the Orchestra 2 is a tuck style and this is a gliding style, the bass very equal. I really can't fault it in the bass. It's in the way that it scales, where then the Orchestra 2 just takes things just that little extra more forward, and it's not. It's very much a give and take. Sometimes the Luna keeps up, sometimes the Luna loses, sometimes it's the other way around. But overall, it's more a split that benefits the Orchestra 2. I would say it's maybe a 60-40 split when it comes to the mids, upper mids, and treble. And it's down to the ability of the Orchestra 2 scaling in a more competent manner. There's about the same equal amount of details, about the same equal amount of capabilities in terms of timbre and tonality. Both of them are really, or in my opinion, really correct when you consider it's all BA IEMs. So timbre and tonality, detail, all that at lower to mid volumes, very equal. Not much, there's not much in it. It's when you start going a little bit higher in volume that you notice that the Luna seems to run out of steam quicker. And that's, well, down to obviously the fact that we got less BAs doing those frequency ranges. So that's obviously you're going to take the hardware to its limits quicker. So yes, it does run out of steam. Yeah, it is using nulls in the upper end. I don't know what it's being used here in the Orchestra, but what I do know is that whatever is being used here, even if it's of better quality than on the Orchestra, the way that it was tuned on the Orchestra, and the fact that you got more of them on the Orchestra too, excuse my mistake here, does make it more competent when you start pushing the volume. And it's that extra amount of clarity that's maintained up top that really, makes things tend or pen towards the Orchestra too. For example, one of the songs where this is very noticeable, and it doesn't take much to pick up on it, is Walking Out Slow by New Old Blues. At mid to low volumes, you choose, you decide which one. Once you pass a little bit that point there, which will vary for each one, obviously, Orchestra 2, it maintains its composure, the way that his voice comes out. I mean, absolutely incredible on the Orchestra 2, good on the Luna. Okay, again, let me just make it perfectly clear. I'm not saying now go sell your Luna, go get an Orchestra 2. No, I'm not saying none of that. I'm saying that in my ears, with my gear, with my music, this is how they came across. I give the Luna a slight edge because of that. It's also a little bit cheaper than I give the Orchestra a slight edge over the Luna. I give it also an edge because it's slightly cheaper than the Luna. And ultimately, if I was in the market of buying one or the other, I would opt for the Orchestra 2 right now. That's my opinion. And that doesn't take anything away from what I previously said about the Luna. The Ziggurat Luna is a phenomenal IEM. Really good. So I don't want this to be now. He's now dissing the Luna, and now the Orchestra 2 now is his favorite. No. They are both really good. and it's just down to how one scales versus the other. End of story. Anyway, guys, I hope I was able to clarify things here about the Kiwi Ears Orchestra 2. Gets my thumbs up. Really nicely done IEM, well built, right accessories, everything. It ticks all the right boxes in that department. The price is very competitive, $349. You know, I mean, it's lower than some IEMs which have become extremely popular. Softier's Studio 4, for example, is more expensive, and it's only a 4 BA unit. That's one IEM that actually I've been listening, going back and forth between the two of them. And if you guys want me to do a more complete comparison, you know, if I get enough people asking me, I'll definitely do it. So you know, it's an IEM that, although the BA count is high, it's been well tuned, it's been well put together, and sounds great. All right, guys, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask me. Take care now. Bye bye.